Tall, dark man wanted to lockpick my house after a New Year's party. I have other creepy encounters as well that I might post on here, but I'll write this one first, since it is the most current one. It happened about 2 hours ago, and I'm still contemplating whether or not I should call the cops. First off, you need to know that I live in a poor Eastern European country, in a big city, in a bad neighborhood. At least that's what I've been told. I've never actually encountered any creepy individuals that would want to do me any harm, just your usual vandals and troublemakers. Never anything serious. I'm also still a teenager and live with my parents, but growing up in this environment, I consider myself to be quite street smart, feature that has helped me whenever I was in trouble. It turned out to be very useful today. At about 3 p.m., my dad left for ping pong practice, and I knew that he'd be back by about 8 p.m. He usually goes for a beer with his friends afterwards to chill, and coincidentally, my older brother and mom left to help one of my friends clean up the place after a New Year's party. I should have come along too, but today I felt a bit sick, and I decided I should stay in. In reality, I was very hungover, but my mom doesn't know that. That was probably the luckiest I've ever been. You'll find out why in a minute. So, all of my family leaves except for me. Naturally, I've been home alone before, so that doesn't really make me uneasy at all. But having been a long-time reader of the subreddit, I take more precaution than I used to. Like, check to see if the door is closed, turn off the lights when not needed, etc. The evening goes just like any other. I'm rewatching some episodes of Skins, the UK version, when suddenly, I feel the urge to get a snack. Just behind my apartment complex, there is a very well-known supermarket on which I can always rely on whenever I'm in deep need of a snack. So that is like a 5-minute walk. I put on my coat and some flip-flops and I'm out. It's freezing balls outside, and I can see the bright lights of the supermarket in the distance. But something was off. In front of the automatic doors, there was a small, robust figure, and as I got closer, I could distinguish his face. It was this man whose face I've seen before. I remember him countless times, roaming around our block of flats, but never actually thought anything of it. He was dressed poorly and was staying in front of the doors, as if he was guarding them. I asked if the supermarket was still open, and he pointed at a paper which was clipped near the schedule. It said it closed at 6 p.m. due to the holiday season. It was 6:20 p.m. I let out a sigh of relief and wanted to turn around to go home, but he told me, in an alarmed voice, that there was a very close boutique next to the supermarket. I told him that I didn't need anything important and that I would just come back tomorrow, but he kept insisting that, saying it's a 2-minute walk from here, all the while staring at me in a weird manner. That was the first red flag, but I found a logical explanation in my mind, thinking that maybe the man was just very eager to help me out. Maybe so, that I'd give him some money. That sort of made sense in my mind, but I was still alert. So, I walked to the boutique and took whatever I could find fastest, paid, wished the shop owner a happy new year, and left in a hurry. As time passed, I was getting more and more nervous for some reason. I don't know why. I guess it was my gut telling me that something was off. Which made me switch was the fact that I'd been gone for about 5 minutes, and as I was passing the supermarket again, the guy who was usually roaming the area was nowhere to be seen. At that point, I started jogging towards my apartment, all the while trying to calm myself down and imagining plausible explanations as to why the guy was not there anymore. I got to the bottom of the stairs of the front door, and in the distance, I'm short-sighted, I noticed a tall, dark figure entering the elevator, and at the same time, almost planned, the automatic light switched off. I desperately ran towards the interphone and clumsily got my keys out to open the door. As I ran to the elevator, it was still running. I live on the 7th floor. I could see it go up to the 3rd, then 4th, then 5th, then it stopped. I let out a big sigh of relief, but was still skeptical, so I took the stairs. As I was walking up the stairs, almost laughing, I noticed that, above me, the light on the 6th floor was turned on. That was a bit curious, but I kept on walking. Suddenly, I saw the light on the 7th floor turn on, and I stopped, looked above, and hoped that whoever it was would go to the 8th. A minute passed, which felt like hours, and the light on the 7th floor was still on. I decided to take action, so I ran all the way up to my floor and I saw that something that almost made me pass out. The tall, dark figure was kneeling at my doorknob, trying to what I presume to lockpick my door. In these kinds of situations, I rarely get angry. I just want whatever is going on to stop, so from afar, I shout a very weak, "Hey!" And the guy in an instant turns around and stands up. I see him for a split second, and he looks fucking terrifying. Long black trench coat, a hat, and leather gloves. He smiles at me and reveals his yellow, unkempt teeth. His fucking smiles at me. Do you know how stomach-churning feeling when you stumble upon something that's so scarily out of this world and wrong that you just cannot look? But you want to? That was that. Amplified by like 1,000. I was shitting my pants, and to my surprise, the man took off running. Before he reached the stairs, he mumbled a sorry and got away. I was still in shock and couldn't follow him or call the police. Or even move, for that matter. I easily got to the door of my apartment and noticed a pin was still stuck in there. Yep. He was definitely trying to get into my house. Who knows what he wanted to do? My parents wouldn't be back for about 2 more hours, and I'm not sure if I should tell them or even call the cops. Thinking in retrospect, I think this tall man and the man in front of the supermarket may have conducted a plan. It would have been all too convenient for him to catch me off guard like that. Either way, that's a scary thought. One thing is for certain, I will be keeping a bat in my room from now on, so much for New Year's resolution. So tall, dark man that wanted to enter my home uninvited. Let's not meet. Year Stalker. It was New Year's Day, and it was me, my mom, my brother, and his best friend RJ. We went to laser tag earlier that night, and we were driving home after it hit midnight. We turned onto RJ Street, and as we were driving, a random guy wearing a camo jacket ran into the street in front of us and ran back. What a fucking idiot, my mom said. We continued driving until we parked outside of RJ's house and then dropped him off. My brother went inside for a minute to see RJ's new racing game, so me and my mom sat in the car for a few minutes, till my brother came out of RJ's house. At the time, a red minivan drove down the street. With the passenger window down, some guy yelled, "You fucking bitch!" at my mom. My brother quickly got in the car and the red minivan stopped, and the guy in camo got out of the passenger seat and started running for our car. My mom immediately backed up and drove away. We took a few turns to make sure we lost them and we drove home. Once we got home, we were all freaking out and we locked the doors. My mom went to bed and so did my brother. I stayed up because I'm the night owl of the family, and I looked out my window near 2 a.m. to see the red minivan parked out on our street. I tried to see who was in the car for a few minutes, till one of the people in the car went on their phone. From the light coming off of the phone, I could tell it was the guy wearing camo from earlier. It's been 2 weeks since then, and I still see the red minivan around my house. I haven't told my parents, because they're already dealing with family problems right now. It's creeping me out. Hopefully it goes away. Maybe I did meet him twice. This is the start of 2 stories in one, which might be the same person or might not be. I don't know which is worse, I'll let you decide. New Year's 2009, going into 2010, I went to visit a friend who was attending university at a nearby city. The house she lived in happened to be a street away from the house I was born in, and spent the first 7 years of my life in, so I knew the area reasonably well. There were 4 of us girls, but only myself and the girl who was going to university knew the area at all. Basically, her house was at the edge of a walled park, which was locked overnight dusk to dawn. On the other side of the park was the main body of the city, including the university itself and the majority of the pubs, clubs, and drinking places. To get from one to the other, you'd have to go around the park, which for the most part is reasonably well lit. We'd spent the night out over New Year's, and all of us were pretty drunk at the time. The token lightweight was smashed. The normally sensible one of the 3 of us was hiccuping and falling all over the place, saying she loved us all. Feeling was mutual. The university goer was the usually messy drunk, but she seemed to be holding herself together tonight, though she and I were also stumbling, and noticeably drunk anyways. We took the route over to the top of the park, because it was marginally quicker. As we walked along, we passed the opening of a back alley, where we saw a man just standing in the middle of the lane, about 30 yards away. Now, he wasn't on his phone. He wasn't with anyone. He was just standing there, stock still and dressed in dark, nondescript clothes, directly in the middle of the empty alleyway and facing towards us. University girl and I clocked eyes, and both of us knew something was up with this picture. Sensible girl drunkenly decided it would be a great time to yell, "Happy New Year!" at the top of her lungs and enthusiastically wave at him. University girl and I dragged her. We were already supporting Lightweight away from the alleyway and quickly marched both of them onwards. University girl asked me if he was following us, and my heart stopped as I turned my head and I saw that he had left the alleyway. We sped up. Now, at this moment, University girl and I realized the predicament easily. We were closer to the front entrance to her house. It was terraced, so a huge row of connected houses. But that would mean the man, who was casually walking behind us, but definitely gaining, would almost certainly know which house we were staying inside, and which house my friend lived in. Otherwise, we could walk around the block, go up the back alleyway, and go in through the rear entrance, which was a longer journey, but had more opportunity to lose him. We decided to take the risk to go round the back, and luckily lost him before we got to the alley entrance, so he wasn't 100% on where we'd gone, or which house we'd gone into. Uni girl and I got sensible girl and Lightweight settled down, and began sneaking looks out the front window curtains, only to see him walking up and down the road on the other side, quite obviously peering into windows and looking at lights that were on in the houses. Our skin crawled, so we phoned the non-emergency police number and told them what had happened. They sent a car around the block over, and we saw the dude quickly disappear after that happened. The next morning, we told the other two what had happened. They had absolutely no clue what danger we had been in. We had the TV on in the background, and the local news came on. A girl had been separated from her friends while drunk the night before, and had been attacked and raped in the same road we saw the man in the first place. Collectively, we were shaken by what could have happened. The second part occurred when I moved back to the area in 2014. By then, I totally forgot about this specific episode, so I was trying to settle back in. My job, which had brought me to the area, was again on the other side of the park, this time at the bottom, and my new house was a few roads back from where Uni's girls had been, so I basically would walk the same road every day to and from work, through the park during daytime, and along the lower wall of the park at nighttime. I would work late on some days, with my hours going up until 11 p.m., but often I wouldn't leave to walk home until 12 a.m., 1 a.m., or even sometimes 2 a.m. in the morning. It was a shit job. They kept putting me on a Friday and Saturday nights, which I didn't mind at all. But then 2 Saturdays in a row, I felt like I was being followed by someone, though both times I was able to go into a shop to lose them, or to get a friend who lived on the way to come outside their house and chat to me, and though the person following turned around or went a different way. I rotated my shift for weekends for a little bit, so it didn't escalate any further, and it didn't happen on weekdays, so I thought I was just being paranoid, because it was dark and stuff. So a couple months later, however, I stayed late at work on a Friday again, got out at 1:30 a.m. exhausted and ready for my bed. I was sleepily wandering on my way home, not really paying close attention to my surroundings, when a man from the other side of the road crossed towards me. I was immediately alert, wondering what he wanted. He asked me if I had a light, but I said, "Sorry, no, I don't smoke," and kept walking. He kept going in the opposite direction behind me, but then I heard his feet turn, and his footsteps. It was at that moment I heard his footsteps follow behind me. I just kept walking. Maybe he was going home for a light. I took my next turning, And sure enough, he did too. We were walking alongside a fairly busy main road, well lit and had cars going past every few minutes. But I was about to turn into a much quieter residential area, where the lights were less frequent and there wouldn't be cars going past, unless going to a house. Not wanting to be paranoid, I decided to do a test on whether this guy was just innocently heading home, or actually had another purpose for turning around behind me. This, by the way, is when my brain decided to remind me we are literally walking right past the house where the first incident happened. Now at the moment, I turn into the residential area. The first building on the right is a funeral home, which has 2 carports in the back where they keep the hearses. I scooted down past the house, barely not breaking into a full-on run. I hid in one of the carports, sticking my head out in the shadow to watch if he'd first follow me into the residential area, and secondly, if he just walked straight past the little alley I was hiding in. Sure enough, he turned into the residential area. He walked halfway across the alley opening. Then, he began visibly searching for me in the 2 directions in which I could have gone. If I kept walking, I would have been very visible to this guy. Instead, he gave up after a few seconds of just walking back and forward, shrugged his shoulder a few times, and began walking back where he came from. I went home, shaken by what I'd seen, and asked my bosses if I could possibly not work late on Friday and Saturdays, because I've been followed recently on 3 different occasions. Their response was that it wasn't possible to get preferential treatment, so if I wanted to be safe, they recommend I take a taxi, which they would not pay for and would cost me an hour's pay for a 2-minute drive. I lived a 12-minute walk from my workplace. Someone opening my door late at night. I was visiting my parents for break over Christmas and New Year's. They live kinda out in the middle of nowhere with forests on 2 sides of them, and only a neighbor to the right and one across the street. The other lots are undeveloped. The way their house is set up is they have a garage that faces the woods. Then the garage leads to a laundry room, which leads into the kitchen. On New Year's Eve, I was sick, so I decided to stay home and watch movies instead of going out. My parents went to their next-door neighbor's house, which left me alone for their 2 boxer dogs. Me, being the masochist that I am, turn off all the lights and try to find the scariest movie I can on Netflix. While I'm sitting there about 30 minutes into my movie and cuddled up with one of the dogs, I hear the laundry room door click, like it was open, and slowly swing shut. That door does that all the time when someone forgets to fasten it shut, especially when my mom leaves the house, because one of the dogs always opens the door to wait for my mom to get back and gets trapped in the laundry room, So I go to check on it and let my dog out of the laundry room when I realize that my dog isn't in there. Still, I assumed it just had something to do with the AC turning on and making the door open slightly then close, so I pull it tight so it can't do that again, and go back to the couch with my dog and turn the movie on again. About 10 minutes go by and I hear it again, so I go out and the door is open again. I close the door, thinking maybe I just didn't pull it as tight as I thought the last time, and it popped open again, But this time I lean my body weight against it so it won't happen again and scare me again. Again, I go back to the couch and put the movie back on. Then, about 10 or so more minutes go by, and I hear the door click again. This time I'm completely freaked out because there is no freaking way it is opening, besides someone actually doing it. So I turn on all the lights, grab the dog leashes, and get ready to go next door to hang out there and tell my parents what happened and ask if they can come home early or if they're trying to scare me. As I'm getting ready to walk out of the door, I get a text from my neighbor across the street, a high school friend of mine who was home also, and he asked me if I was sneaking people into my house. When I said no and asked why, he told me he happened to be walking by his window when he saw someone go from the woods into my garage. He said that after he saw it happen a couple more times and assumed it was a few different people. He said he saw it happen again just now, so he thought he would ask. I flipped out and locked the doors and called the cops, then my parents. The cops never found out anything, but nothing was missing or broken or anything like that. So who knows? At any rate, creepy person or creepy people trying to scare or prank me, please, let's not meet. My grandma narrowly escaping Jerome Brudos. In 1968, my grandpa was working as a professional rodeo announcer, traveling all over the western US almost every weekend. In the early days of his career, he just drove to each rodeo, wearing out 2 new cars per year. Instead of burning through vehicles and wasting a ton of time, he started flying small planes. Each time he had to go announce, Grandma would drive him out to the Salem airport to his hangar. He'd fly to Salinas, or Calgary or Houston, and she'd pick him up when he returned. Grandpa was on his way back from a rodeo, and called Grandma from whichever city he'd gone to, telling her he'd be back late, around midnight or 1, and to come by and pick him up. After waiting a little closer to the arrival time, Grandma hopped in her enormous Lincoln, the preferred car of Grandma's everywhere, and made her way through the back roads of South Salem to the airport. This town is not known for being a happening place even now, and in '68, that held especially true. This was why it struck Grandma as odd that a pair of headlights pulled out behind her on the empty, winding road. She kept glancing in the rear view, and each time, the car behind her was the same distance from her tail. It matched her, turn for turn for turn. She prolonged the trip a little bit, hoping whoever it was would drop off, stop following, but it wasn't happening. At this point, she figured Grandpa had already arrived at the airport. Of course, she had no way to tell him what was happening and nowhere to go. Every gas station and mini-mart from Eugene to Portland would be closed, and Grandpa was not known for his patience, nor his level-headedness. She finally turned into the airport, down the row of hangars. The car stayed behind her, and now she knew their intentions were evil. There was no reason to follow a lone woman down a dead-end road at a closed airport. She pulled up to Grandpa's hangar. He would leave the light on, and the large roll-up door opened slightly so that he could hear her honk for him to come out and lock up. As she pulled up, she laid on the horn in long, insistent blasts. She waited, not sure what would happen next. The car behind her stopped, and a pudgy, unpleasant-looking man got out. My grandma, not one to back down from a fight, got out of her car as well. She didn't know what she would do, but she was sure as hell would face the sumbitch. Just then, Grandpa emerged from the hangar, silhouetted in the headlights in his Stetson, boots, and suit. He looked even bigger than the man was. "Who the hell is this?" he shouted, with a hint of accusation in his booming voice. "I have no idea," said Grandma. "He's been following me for miles." At that point, the puggish, plump man ran back to his car and gunned it. What he didn't realize was that the road he took was actually tarmac, and he wound up at the end, cornered by both fence and field. The grandparents pursued. They shot down the runway after him. They pulled in the parallel to the end fence, making sure he had nowhere to go. Grandpa got out of the car, walked up to the man's open window, leaned in and grabbed him by the collar. "What the hell you think you're doing?" "Nothing, I was lost then." "You sure as hell weren't. You were following my wife, you little shit." The man went pale. "Now if I ever find you out here been following my wife again, I'll beat you so bad you wish you'd never been born, you understand me?" The man nodded, and Grandpa let go of his lapels. He went back to the car, and he and Grandma took the long way home to make sure no one was behind them. The encounter was far from forgotten when they saw the man again, this time on the news. He was found guilty of strangling 4 women. One of them, he kept her foot to model his woman's shoe collection. The rest of the bodies he tied to engine blocks and thrown into the Willamette River.